Greetings and welcome to the Transform Podcast. This is episode 43. It is Friday, March 18th, 2022, and I'm your host, Christopher Anastasio. And welcome back, guys. I have a couple of house cleaning items that I want to, housekeeping items that I wanted to cover before we get into today's episode. There are a few of them, just sort of some things I want to kind of point out or cover, like I said, before we start. So first off, to all of our listeners that celebrate Holi, I wanted to wish all of you a happy and joyous Holi. For our listeners in the United States, I encourage you to, if you don't know what that is, to go ahead and research that, Google it, and take a look at what that holiday is and what it means. But to everybody who celebrates, wanted to cover that right away as the long weekend gets underway, or already has gotten underway for all of you. So wanted to point that out right away. Also wanted to point out for eagle-eyed listeners, or eagle-eared listeners, that we were supposed to publish, I don't want to say we, I would say I was supposed to publish this episode last week. I believe it was Wednesday, March 9th, we had episode 42 come out, and then later that week had obviously planned to do what we usually do, which is 2 episodes per week, and the pace that we've kind of maintained now for several months. But unfortunately, I just returned from some West Coast travel here in the United States, got in rather late last night, and during that travel was just unable to record this episode. So instead, what we did is took our usual 2 episodes. If you guys have noticed, we usually start with an even episode, and then the second episode is an odd episode. So we just split those over the last 2 weeks. So Wednesday, March 9th, you can catch episode 42, which was the introduction to influencer marketing, and episode 43 today. We're going to cover our topic for the day, which I'll get into in a moment. And then next week we'll be back on our regular schedule. So you can catch the 2 episodes next week will be 44 and 45. So there's that. And I believe that was, so I just want to let you guys know that about the episodes and returning from travel. I guess the last note I was going to point out is to those who listened to the last few episodes, I also wanted to apologize for the condition of my voice. I was coming off some mild illness in the first couple days of March, so any of those early March episodes, you probably will still hear a little bit of throatiness from that illness, so definitely apologize for that as well, guys. And you may even hear a little bit of it in my voice right now, but I assure you that's really more so from just the fatigue of traveling some distance over the last 24 hours or so. Okay, guys? So just kind of wanted to cover those items right off the bat. Today's episode is really, I would say it's kind of at the tactical level. It's kind of narrow focused. It was sparked by something I saw one of the gentlemen that I follow online. Well, let's just say the topic for today's episode is going to be habits versus goals, okay, and just my take on the value of those two things. But really, my take is inspired by a couple of individuals that one of them I don't think I've ever mentioned on this. Actually, neither of them have been mentioned on this podcast. Now that I think about it, pretty sure neither of them have. One of them, a gentleman named Sam Ovens, runs a website called consulting.com, and talks about building successful consulting businesses and so forth. So, not always a whole lot of relevance there. I think that's why I probably never mentioned him. There's some probably ancillary, relevance from some of the things that I've picked up in my time studying his material. So he kind of factors into this discussion to a certain degree. And then also a gentleman named Alex Hormozi, Hormozi, who really kind of rose to fame, and that's probably a bad way to put it because he's not that famous outside of this narrow circle or this tight circle. online marketing and sales and so forth. But he wrote a book called $100 Million Offers, and he really based his experience that you get in that book on the success he had that was recognized through Russell Brunson, who does the ClickFunnels software, okay, co-founder of ClickFunnels. And Alex Hormozi was part of what they call the 2 Comma Club. And the 2 Comma Club are individuals who've reached over $1 million in sales using the ClickFunnels software. So not to go down too many rabbit holes there, but the bottom line is he's very accomplished in the realm of business and sales and marketing, particularly with regard to fitness centers. I think that was kind of his thing, is he marketed and sold a certain approach or solution to having a highly profitable gym, to running a highly profitable gym. So anyway, not that that's so important, guys. I mean, if you're interested, I would definitely encourage you to read his book. I mean, it's a tremendous book, $100 Million Offers. I think, you may not feel like some of this stuff applies to your business. I mean, I would say that anybody who has, 7-figure revenue success using various sales tactics and marketing tactics probably is relevant to your business on some level. But, obviously, when you go for advice and stuff like that, it's a very personal choice as to where you get it from. So for me, Alex was and is, I follow him actively and so forth. He is very inspirational in the way that he breaks down and simplifies things like sales calls and, advertising angles and things of that nature. But one of the things that he said while I was traveling that I picked up on, and I just kind of wanted to convey it to you guys here. I mean, it's not going to take long to convey it, but it's something that could be a teaser for you or a nugget for you to kind of think about and do your own follow-up on, is the power of establishing habits versus setting goals, okay? And why there's much more practical value in setting habits than there is in setting goals, okay? And so basically, what he was saying was, and some of you may understand that right off the bat, you may need no explanation whatsoever, but what he was saying was, instead of setting a lofty goal, like, and I'm going to kind of relate this to you guys, not that this is necessarily what he said in the very short piece of content that I consumed, but instead of saying, hey, I have a goal to reach 10,000 Instagram followers by the end of the year, right? I mean, again, this is within the sphere of you want to sharpen your social media game, you want to get better at, what you're doing on social media. So I'm assuming, if you have that as an overall framework, then you might be setting a goal like this, okay? So you say, okay, I want 10,000 Instagram followers by the end of the year. Okay, I mean, that's a goal to strive for, right? But when you've set it, it still leaves open the question of, well, how are you going to get there? I mean, how are you going to do that? And there isn't a whole lot behind the goal, right? The goal sounds great, but there's not a whole lot more to it. So the habit, you say, okay, well, okay, Chris, maybe setting that goal isn't so helpful. What's the habit? Why is that the valuable piece of the equation? Well, if you said, okay, instead of focusing on or setting that goal, I am going to institute the habit of posting daily to Instagram, and maybe taking that a step further, I'm going to establish the habit of posting on various formats within Instagram. So I'm going to, every day I'm going to post maybe a little bit, I'm going to post a news feed, post on Monday, on Tuesday it's going to be a series of stories, on Wednesday it'll be an Instagram reel, that kind of thing, right? So let's say you set that habit to do one of those Instagram formats every single day, 7 days a week, 52 weeks a year, 365 days, right? Then if you set that habit, you are going to increase your Instagram follower count. Now, are you going to increase it to 10,000? I don't know. I mean, if you're at 0, probably not. But instituting that habit for 365 days will definitely move the needle, whereas just saying to yourself, hey, I have a goal of 10,000 Instagram followers is probably not going to do you any good at all. I mean, unless there's some action tied to it, okay, which is essentially the habit, okay? So when Alex kind of said this, it triggered another memory for me, which was a couple years ago, studying some material from this other gentleman I mentioned, Sam Ovens, where he talked about the power of habits and the fact that successful business owners are really separated. I mean, in his opinion, obviously this is his take. And again, if you want to look up Sam Ovens, you can look up consulting.com, but it may not be what you think. So I mean, it's a course on developing, like I said, a successful consulting business, but it's a program you pay into and stuff like that. But you can look up his YouTube channel if you want to consume free content from him. He does have a YouTube channel that he recently restarted. But the point is, it's the habit that separates the successful from the non-successful. So Sam was saying the same kind of thing that Alex was, but his take on it was, how do you actually institute the habit? How do you actually develop the habit, right? The word habit suggests that it's something you do every day or something you do routinely or whatnot. So Sam was saying, hey, if you tie an action to a reward, so you have a trigger and then an action and a reward. So the trigger could be your alarm goes off. Okay, this is totally just an example. Trigger is the alarm goes off. Action is you do the thing you're trying to habitualize. Reward is, let's say you like a fancy coffee. Okay, just totally by example here. So you might say something, I believe that was his example actually in his material, but you would say something like, okay, when the alarm goes off, I go to the gym. And after I go to the gym, I stop by my favorite cafe and I order my favorite coffee, right? So you have the trigger. Every time the alarm goes off, I go to the gym. And when I finish with the gym, I go ahead and I get this coffee that I love, right? And you just do that loop over and over and over again. It will eventually become habitualized because the trigger will be reinforced. Every time you hear the alarm, you'll think of the gym. And the reason that every time the trigger works and every time you think of the gym when the alarm goes off is because you'll be kind of looking forward to, maybe not kind of, you'll be looking forward to the reward. You'll be thinking like, oh, okay, if this alarm is going off, which means I have to go to the gym, then that means I'm going to be that much closer to getting that coffee that I love. Okay, so I probably didn't do a perfect job of explaining that, but that's essentially what he says and how he describes setting this sort of habit forming technique and engaging in that. So the bottom line, guys, is when I listened to Alex's piece about habits and goals, it made me think about what Sam said about how to actually set the habit, and it made me think about, for you guys, for all our listeners to the podcast, just kind of bringing it full circle now around to you guys and why this means something to you in light of everything else we talk about here. It's like, what can you guys do if you're really trying to take control of your social media activity and you're trying to take control of your marketing activity and how you can kind of move the ball down the field, so to speak, and get closer to your goals of actually yielding results with that marketing and that effort that you're putting into social media. I believe it kind of lies in this realm of setting good habits every day with regard to those marketing activities. So I think that where you would benefit from this is kind of twofold. So obviously, if you set a habit, let's go back to the example I gave about posting on Instagram every day. If you set that habit, well then, boom, right off the bat, you have established consistency. Okay, and if you've been listening to this podcast, you know that one of the things that's an essential ingredient, and not the only one, but one of the essential ingredients to being successful on these platforms is consistently producing and developing and creating, documenting, whatever word you want to use, whatever verb, content for those platforms, right? So you have to be in the mindset that the most powerful thing you can do is to repeat the action every day, right? The most powerful thing you do. It's not about, coming up with some, viral, video or some magic post that's going to get you 1 million followers in a day. It's about just repeating the action every day, going back to the platform or platforms that you're on and posting, right? So forming a habit, like, Alex was saying, versus setting some lofty goal, helps you get to that consistency, obviously. I mean, essentially is the essence of that consistency, right? And so the other benefit I think you guys gain from this, relative to other things I've talked about on this podcast, is not worrying about production, not worrying about having, some fancy approach to producing that content, everything from, fancy equipment and setups and, having soundproof rooms and, 3 ring lights and, all this stuff that you sometimes see in people who are producing, maybe highly sophisticated content on YouTube or, podcasts or whatever. The point is that you don't need all that to post consistently or to post at all. I mean, it's just not an essential ingredient right now for you, particularly if you're in the early stages of establishing your presence and getting known and kind of putting your voice out there and things of that nature. So I think when you habitualize and kind of follow this advice that I cited from Alex and Sam, if you can follow along with that, or if you're already doing that, then the benefits gained are in the realm of, like I said, consistency, and in the realm of not being hung up on production value. Because if you're willing to go at it every day and you don't necessarily have these resources handy or you haven't invested in them yet, well, you'll just plow through that. You'll just post every day, and you will produce something. You'll publish something based on your habit, and you won't be thinking so much about was it perfect? Did it sound great? Was there a noise in the background? You're just going to shove all that to the side, and you're just going to execute along the lines of this habit that you've formed. Okay? So I just kind of wanted to throw that out there for you guys. There's actually quite a bit of material that I've been consuming over the last, I'd say, 6 to 9 months from Alex that I think is helpful to you guys, and I will synthesize that into the podcast. Of course, always mention to you when I'm drawing from him, so you can go check out the source material. And you can take a look at what he says directly. But Alex has definitely, helped shape my thinking in terms of, real tactical sales level type activity. And not that that's always going to be relevant to you guys, but I think there's pieces and parts that go together that will be relevant to you guys. So I felt like this was one of those pieces, and I encourage you to check him out. And you probably can just Google something that has to do with both his name, Alex Hormozi, and habits versus goals, or habits and goals, something to that effect. But definitely, if you go check out his social media pages, I'm sure you will see this clip in there somewhere. And like I said, if you're interested in Sam Ovens, you can check him out at consulting.com. We have no affiliation with these individuals. We make no money from referring you to anybody or pointing you in any of these directions. So this is all for your guys' benefit to check this stuff out and see for yourself. So anyway, that kind of wraps up today's episode, guys. That's really what I wanted to leave you with is this thought about, from a social media and a marketing perspective and so on, how do you get to the level of, like a lot of things I've talked about in this podcast, branding yourself, being super consistent, constantly getting content out there, making your voice heard, making yourself known. This is one of those ways. This is one of those very undergirding type things that buttresses and supports the types of efforts that I've described on here to get yourself to a branded, position. It takes a lot of things, and I really truly believe that from a social media marketing perspective, that consistency and not being hung up on production are definitely big pieces of that puzzle, and really require, being set before you can reach that end point that I've talked about on other episodes about branding yourself and really elevating your business and that sort of thing. So anyway, guys, I'm going to wrap it up here. I hope everybody has had a great week. The travel I just went on was outstanding. It was just an incredible trip with my son, my fiance. So really, really, really had a great time. It's also good to be back with putting out content for you guys and communicating to you guys, these things that we at Transform are, constantly kind of focusing on. So good to kind of get back in the saddle for that. I hope you guys took something from today's episode. Again, check back with us next week. We will be back on our regular schedule. I promise you that. We'll be back with episodes 44 and 45 the week of March 21st. And again, to everybody, hope you have great weekend, great holiday for those that are celebrating. And check us out next week. So, going to sign off here, guys. Thanks again for listening to episode 43, and we will talk to you guys next week. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.